Finally, on behalf of the Sonoran Center, I would like to read the university's land acknowledgement statement. We respectfully acknowledge the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of Indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being home to the O'odham and Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and Indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. Now with that, we can go ahead and get started today. I will hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Austin Duncan, to introduce today's session. Austin?
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone to this session on concussion and traumatic brain injury among Native Americans in Arizona, put on by my colleague Joshua Drywater and myself. Joshua cannot be here. He's at another actual National Native American Conference over in Ohio, of all places. But we have a statement from him that will show right at the beginning of the session. Our panelists today are Nikisha Tully, Kenny Dodson, and Tana Treetop, as you can see on the screen. And this talk is all sponsored by the Arizona Governor's Council on Spinal and Head Injuries. Thank you very much to them for their support in helping us put on this panel. Now, the subject for today's talk is concussion and traumatic brain injury. I understand there's a lot of confusion about trauma and exactly what trauma means. In this case, we're talking about physical injury. So TBI, or traumatic brain injury, and concussion are all examples of a head or brain injury. We'll be discussing this among Native American populations in the state of Arizona, specifically in 4 sections. First, we'll talk about the incidence rates among Native Americans in Arizona. Then we will talk about what life with TBI is, which is primarily social and not medical, as it is often held. Then we'll have the bulk of our presentation will be the survivors and family panel. Finally, we will open it up to you. We'll have some questions and we will let you all join in the discussion. So without further, and let me first start out by disclosing both my own and Joshua's identity as traumatic brain injury survivors. I suffered a very severe TBI in 2003 from a bus accident. Joshua suffered his injury in Iraq when he was serving in the military. And with that, I'm going to give it over to Joshua to share his presentation. So I hope you can all see this, and let me know if you have any problems hearing or seeing the sound.
Nagad kanji stage dagwadon ji jalag tucson janela delikwa awatasa utan jundel kwasti dagilastane. Hello everyone, my name is Joshua Drywater and I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation and program manager for Native Initiatives at the Sonoran Center for Excellence in Disabilities. First, let me say thank you to Austin, JC, and Brandy for asking me to present briefly on a subject that is extremely near and dear to my heart, both because of the fact that the focus is on Native American populations, but also because I am the veteran pictured on the previous slide. My sincerest apologies for not being at this event live streamed, but I am concurrently presenting another very important discussion on Native American youth at the annual ABSI conference. Without further ado, let me discuss a bit about the statistics concerning concussions and TBI in general, and then a few points to be made about TBI within Indian country. Concussions and TBI are both defined as a disruption in the normal function of the brain caused by a bump, blow, or jolt to the head, or a penetrating head injury. There are over 2 million new cases every year in the United States alone. Numerous causes of concussion and TBI are seen and noted, including falls, assaults, struck by or against an object, traffic accidents, etc. The severities of the injuries can vary. You might see a diagnosis of a concussion or a moderate brain injury, or a severe brain injury. The sequelae, the consequences of the injury or the symptoms vary between survivors as well as over time. According to the CDC, Native Americans have the highest recorded incident of concussions and TBI. When we start looking at the reasons for the Native Americans having the highest number among the population, we don't really know the true incident, but we do have some statistics. Native Americans have the highest rate of hospitalization and death when discussing concussions and TBI. The numbers are in 2018 were 189.6 hospitalizations and 43.7 deaths per 100,000 people in Arizona. The top causes were listed as falls, assault, and accident. Native American survivors risk poor outcomes due to disparities, health, poverty, violence, and systemic racism. We do not know why the discrepancies that exist, but they are likely not as great due to a host of reasons. Experts really do not think the actual discrepancies are as large as the data suggest. But in saying that, I will pass the presentation back over to Austin to discuss a little bit more of the data and incidents that we have concerning the issue. And then from there, I wanted to end by saying thank you very much for the panelists that will be speaking in the upcoming slides, and I really appreciate everyone's time and consideration in being here, and I hope that this is a catalyst for a lot of discussions that need to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Joshua. Can everyone see my screen again? All right. So these are, well, Joshua just presented all the really striking statistics about TBI among Native American populations in the state and nationally. We don't think the discrepancies are as high as they are for a host of reasons, most of which involve essentially data collection errors or simply sampling errors. However, there is significant reason to think there is a very high rate of very poor outcomes related to TBI, including death, which are due to a number of other factors affecting Native American populations. And we'll be talking about that today. Where my research has picked up is looking at concussion and TBI after medical care. And this, I think, is a large part of what is leading to these high incidence rates. Firstly, sequelae completely vary. There is no universal sequelae after traumatic brain injury. Or sequelae or symptoms. These can improve or regress throughout survivors' lives, depending on the environmental factors that they live with. Moreover, their experiences with those sequelae change throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the year, which is essentially to say that context matters, specifically the environmental, not just the climate, but also physical accommodations, sensory stimuli, other things like that, as well as the social factors in survivors' lives make a very large difference. Social factors being things like social interactions, support, accommodations that are granted to survivors, and also the tolerance and misunderstandings that survivors face, which is a long-winded way of saying that survivors don't necessarily have anything in common, which is a problem for policy. So essentially, we need to ask, how can we help survivors after medical care has come and had its way? And this is where my research focuses, looking at social lives of TBI survivors, where I find that sequelae or symptoms can appear in some contexts, in some interactions, at some times, but not others. which means that survivors often have very significant trouble in rebuilding their social lives, including things like accommodations and supports. And also, misunderstandings frequently arise in these situations, which leads to stigmatization, which interacts with other factors such as gender, age, class, etc., which is especially important for Native American individuals, which then drives survivors into social isolation, poverty, homelessness, and even suicide. TBI survivors have very high rates of all of these, and generally live with a 9-year lower life expectancy. And for Native Americans in this country, that is already lower than other populations. But there is a ray of hope. Families and communities together can mitigate these harmful outcomes. And I would like you all, while our panelists are presenting, to think about the ways that you might be able to mitigate these outcomes in the survivors' lives that you know. And now I would like, without further ado, to introduce our panelists, Nikisha Tully, Kenny Dodson, and Tana Treetop from throughout areas of Arizona and different tribal affiliations. I have several questions prepared, but before I ask those questions, I would like you each to have an opportunity to share your story. So I guess I will start with Kenny, if that's all right, because you're first on my screen. If you can share your story of how you came to have TBI and what that means in your daily life.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, well, that's a weird, my TBI is not the result of any trauma or injury. It's the result of, like it was diagnosed to me. Like I felt like I was getting sick one day, and I went to the doctor, and they couldn't figure out what was going on with me. So yeah, they finally did a MRI scan, and they found like a brain tumor in my central nervous system. So because of that, the symptoms I got from after I was diagnosed, they were classified as like having a TBI injury. So yeah, I'm not totally sure about that whole classification thing, but yeah, and yeah, yeah, it affected a lot my daily activities and stuff. So yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And it should be noted, the official classification or definition of a TBI is a result of an injury, but this includes individuals who have tumors in their heads, especially that are physically removed, because that very much is an injury to the brain from an external object, even if it's not necessarily from outside the body. If it's a tumor, that is affecting your brain in the same way as an actual penetrating head injury does. Nikisha, if you wouldn't mind speaking next, because you're next on my screen.
Okay, hi, my name is Nikisha Tully, and my TBI was brought upon by having a vehicle accident with my mom and my 2 siblings back in October of 1999. And when I had my traumatic brain injury, it causes me to have a learning disability. So I have a short-term memory loss. And when I had returned back to school after recuperating from the hospital, I had to go through so many different therapy sessions and was able to have the assistance of I can't think of it, an IEP, that's what it is. And so that I could carry that on with me throughout my educational career, and so that I would be able to have the sources that I would need, such as notes with me when I take class or when I take tests, and longer times to take tests, so that I could fully formulate the response in my head and be able to express it more. And so I also have, during the time of the accident, I also suffered from um, headaches, severe headaches, and also I was prone to have seizures. And I think I still have those with me here and there, but I know the causes or what would cause it to happen and how to prevent it in a way. And so I just need, yeah.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Tana, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and sharing your story.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tana Treetop, Hunkpapa Lakota, and enrolled tribal member of the Standing Rock Lakota Nation from Fort Yates, North Dakota, originally. I did sustain a concussion, as a child due to a horseback riding incident. But that's not going to be the focus of what I share in the panel today, because I'm representing the family member caregiver part of the panel. So I'll be focusing my information on my son, who is Mateo Treetop, and he's 26 years old. And he sustained his traumatic brain injury when he was 5.5 months old. So when he was a baby, as a result of shaken baby syndrome. And so he went through, years of physical therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy. His TBI did cause brain injury, of course, brain damage, but also he has a long-term deficit in fine motor coordination. So anything that he tries to do with his hands is difficult. Also, it impacted his vision. So he has vision limitations, like a narrowed vision field. So he has a cortical visual impairment. As a result of that, he did have retinal hemorrhages in both eyes. They healed for the most part, but one eye was affected more severely than the other. So he really only has one, good eye. And so that's a little bit about our, family experience with traumatic brain injury.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like now to ask several questions that we have prepared. And each of you feel free to discuss, talk to each other, respond to each other, and answer in any order that you feel is most appropriate. So to begin with, I would like to ask, what are the symptoms of your or your loved one's TBI that you live with now? And how do they affect your lives?
Do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I was diagnosed when I was 17 years old, and it was like my last year of high school, and it really affected my whole life, I guess. So being the main symptom for me is walking and balance. That was really affected because I need to walk to go to work or go to school or something like that. And yeah, that's one of the big symptoms that affects me right now. And I guess my vision and my hearing has also been affected too, where I can't really see far in the distance. And when I read stuff, I gotta kind of gotta read really close. And my hearing has been affected to where it sounds like my hearing it sounds muffled. Everything sounds muffled. And when I'm in like a really really crowded area, it's like every I can hear all the sounds around me, like it sounds um like everybody's talking loud, but I can barely hear my own thoughts. So yeah, that's hard for me to like deal with. Yeah, and also my hand-eye coordination and my motor skills have been affected. I can't write or yeah, like do like little things with my hands. Like yeah, I tried putting a Lego set together one time and I could barely do that. And yeah, for my handwriting is not so good. Like for college, taking notes, like listening to lectures and I can't take notes. I can listen, but taking notes is hard to do. So yeah, yeah, those are my those are the symptoms that affect me right now.
Thank you. Tana or Nikisha, feel free to answer or respond to Kenny.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry, my
Sure.
internet's
Oh,
kind of
and
spotty.
And let me put that question in the chat as well so that you and all the audience can see it. As soon as I can find, oh, I apologize. As soon as I can find the chat. I'm having technical, there we go. So it is, what are the symptoms of your TBI that you or your loved one live with, and how do they affect your lives? And specifically, what are the symptoms of your TBI that you live with today?
Okay. And are we responding to Kenneth's?
Whatever you would like to do, it's up to you.
Okay, well, with Kenneth, I'm sorry, my internet went out, so I wasn't able to really hear what you had to say. But I know in my case, the symptoms that I deal with my TBI is a short-term memory loss. So this was especially hard when I went back to school. So I had to have things modified for me. And with that, I have my IEPs, and I know that this is something that a lot of the schools, universities and schools have problems with. Like when I had graduated from high school, I was told that my IEPs would be able to I could take those to whatever university that I wanted to, and that they would have to accommodate me based on those what was written in my IEPs. But for example, I went to school over in Fort Lewis College, and while I was there, I talked with their disabilities program coordinator, and I was saying this is what I need to have for me to succeed in school. However, they were always saying, you know what, because you have crossed into another state, we have our own state regulations, and so that your regulations that you had over in Arizona do not comply with what we have here in Colorado. And so they told me that I would have to be re-evaluated. But what the problem with that is there are strengths and weaknesses that I had after when I went to school in in grade school that applied then, but when I got into college, they kind of either got better or kind of got worse. But it's a really spotty subject. So in one situation, I could score really high out of one point, but then that's just for that one time, and they do resurface. And so I had to drop out of school from there and be able to apply back at University of New Mexico, which is where I am going to school right now. And they have a really great disabilities program. And so that's where I am receiving a lot of my help from. And they and my advisors, they are able to accommodate me to what I need to do. And if I have any problems with the professors or teachers that I'm dealing with, then that they can be able to intervene and to show what the state regulations are and how we can better be able to help students who have disabilities, learning disabilities, physical disabilities, mental and emotional, and so on and so forth. Anyways, sorry.
Great. That was wonderful. Thank you. Tana, do you have anything you would like to add?
Yes. So with Mateo's story, because his brain injury occurred when he was a baby, he did receive services from all of the different agencies or disability organizations. So he received early intervention services. He was part of the developmental disabilities program. He had an IFSP, which transitioned into an IEP when he became school age. He had an IEP through all 12 years of school. And then fast forward, just because he's still very much a work in progress. And he's now graduated from Scottsdale Community College with 2 degrees and also has 2 part-time jobs. So, he's doing pretty good, but it was definitely not easy. So as his parent, primary caregiver, throughout the years, the TBI symptoms that I have noticed the most were neurological fatigue. That is so prevalent every day, and it varies, and from day to day. So there are those ability fluctuations that Nikisha mentioned as well. Being able to do things really proficiently and amazingly well one day, and then the next day it's like he's never done it before. It's also, as from the parent perspective, it's been difficult, and it continues to be difficult to differentiate or determine what actions or inactions are attributable to Mateo's TBI. It's, I always have to, take that into consideration, in terms of, when he was growing up, like, behavior, or even just, abilities, remembering things, forgetting things, household chores, stuff like that. So that has always been, an ongoing challenge. And then also, of course, I already mentioned the permanent fine motor coordination deficit. He manages to work around that pretty well. There's also definitely executive functioning skills deficit. I think some of those skills are still developing, but they're definitely delayed, and they may not fully develop at this point, given his age. Also, task initiation and the development of self-advocacy skills. He also had to have seizure medication, and now already mentioned the vision issues, so he wears glasses. And so those things, do have a definite impact on his daily life. He navigates pretty well because he's very mellow. I try to be more like him. He does inspire me to be a better person every day. He's got a real skill in terms of, just kind of going with the flow, and not, well, I guess keeping the daily challenges in perspective. Thanks.
Thank you very much for everyone. Now let me ask the next question. What are the community supports and resources that have helped you or your loved ones in your lives dealing with those symptoms that we just discussed? And anyone can start. Sure, Kenny.
What I've found, I realized that I really needed help because it was difficult to progress and get, get get services. So I just I reach out to any available services that will help me. Like I really wanted to work one time, and I went to like vocational rehabilitation services because starting out as working, especially being a person with a disability, it's hard because I had no idea where to start, and I didn't know the process for anything but vocational rehabilitation. Like they told me, like they showed me where to start and how to start, and yeah, they even provided like work training for me and like even like how to build a resume and stuff. And same thing with community college. I wanted to like, or same thing with college. I wanted to start get a degree in higher education. So I I talked to like well actually it was the same thing called vocational rehab. Like I didn't know where to start and stuff, like especially in college. So I had to talk to disability resources, and they they told me like how to accommodate and advocate for myself. So yeah, I did that. And yeah, the accommodation like the like but the accommodations they gave me was like for college was sitting like because of my vision and hearing issues. I was they I was able to sit closer to the professor giving the lecture, and yeah um was able to see and everything. And for my handwriting issues, like they accommodated me with a note taker for the classes I was taking, because I was able to sit through the lecture and mentally take notes, but writing notes down was like a big challenge for me, like a big issue. So I didn't bother with, or I had to accommodate myself with that. So yeah, just little like I had to advocate for myself. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. Tana or Nikisha, would you like to respond or answer the question yourself?
I really like how Kenneth's example, how he has shown that his tribe or himself had to be really self advocate for himself. And for me, I know that after the accident, there wasn't really any community support groups that were open up for individuals who had disabilities like myself. And so a lot of that was issued out through the school and through the hospital. And so with the school, like what Kenneth had said, I had therapists and other resources that I could go out to. And my incident happened when I was in third grade. So I was placed in a speech therapist. And with that speech therapist, she was able to help me to reevaluate how I could have time spaces. So like to take down notes and to have a journal and have a daily schedule and to have that put out for me. And then also as well as I had mentioned before, the use of an IEP that I used throughout my educational career, and especially when I graduated from high school and went on for community college over at Dinnett College. I had several people who had worked with me, and then when I went on for my bachelor's, what I'm currently working on. That's what I'm dealing with right now. And so I think that's about all that I have to say.
That's plenty. Thanks. Tana, please go. Fountain Thomas, please keep your question until we finish with the panelist discussion, because that's an important issue that we will most definitely be talking about. So please ask that again when we're all finished here. Thanks. Tana, would you like to respond?
Yes. So community supports and resources is I think I kind of have a lot to say about that, because you know, we ended up living in several different places throughout the years. So I got the perspective of, you know, seeing the variety of community supports and services, you know, in the different areas and states that we lived in, because Mateo's brain injury occurred in Utah. And then right after, you know, like less than a month after it occurred, we moved to Idaho. Well, we lived briefly in Washington State and then moved to Idaho. And then we moved down here to Arizona. So that's, you know, we've experienced communities in 4 different areas. So it was what I remember from the hospital was a little bit shocking, because, you know, it was a children's, you know, it was children's hospital. And so Mateo was in the pediatric intensive care unit for 2 weeks, you know, hooked up to all the medical machinery, all the tubes and wires. And then I remember the day that he got discharged, you know, they put him in the car and I drove away, and I was thinking, I was a little overwhelmed, because I was thinking, wow, you know, he just had 24/7 medical care and I have no medical training. And what do I do if, you know, and then, you know, that wasn't a good thought to have. So that part was tough. There wasn't anything provided. And I actually asked for resources from the hospital. I said, what, because I'd never heard of traumatic brain injury until it happened to my child. And so really I was motivated just by my own realization that I needed to educate myself. So, and this was, you know, go back 26 years. So maybe the internet was available, but it wasn't available to me. So I remember the hospital saying, when I asked them, they're like, oh, you know, they didn't send me away with any information at all about traumatic brain injury. They said, oh, well, you should probably go to the medical library. And I was thinking, the medical library, I don't know where that is, or, you know, I don't even know what they were talking about. Anyway, so over the years, I did take it upon myself to educate myself about brain injury, and just, you know, take an active role in, you know, advocacy role. And then in the later years to help Mateo, you know, transition and develop his own advocacy skills. But along the way, here in Arizona, the community resources that have been most useful are, Mateo had a TBI itinerant teacher that was provided through the school district, grades K through 12. So all 12 years she was with him, and she followed him, you know, through each school year and helped him, you know, met with him, provided services, was very much an advocate. And I did model my own advocacy skills based on the excellent example that she set. Because I watched her in IEP meetings and how she said things, and, you know, how she effectively worked behind the scenes to get things done. So that was helpful. Also, I encouraged Mateo to attend his own IEP meetings as early as possible, because I realized early on he needed to, you know, become his own best self advocate. And so he started attending his IEP meetings in 4th grade and attended them every year thereafter. And it made a big difference, you know, to have him in that, you know, in that room where he was the topic of discussion. Another, I'm putting it under community support, but I feel like that it's very relevant and probably the biggest indicator of the outcome that Mateo has had so far in dealing with his traumatic brain injury was utilizing cultural teachings, cultural practices, the foundation of who we are as Lakota people. And there are a lot of, really valuable teachings in terms of, how we live our life and how we take care of ourselves. And, so we had those conversations early on because I knew that, the road would be much more difficult for him. And, as you all may know, Native students in education already have a hard road. The graduation rate is typically around 50%. And then if you add in the graduation rate for, students with disabilities, that's not very high either. And then if you think of, Mateo as a Native student with a disability, trying to graduate, statistically, he wasn't supposed to graduate, but he did. And when he graduated on the principal's honor roll with 10 years of perfect attendance, which was all his own doing. I didn't force him to do that. He took that goal upon himself and accomplished it. And so, he was a big part of his success, but also it was based in cultural teachings and for him to not compete with anybody but himself, in that classroom, because we all know that, the classrooms are not designed around cultural values. And so I think that was a big part of his educational success. Also, something that came along a little later was him being able to use audio descriptive headphones at movies, because he is very much an auditory learner. So that was useful and helpful. And I'm thinking of him globally, in all aspects of his life. So him, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, in all of those areas, what are the community supports and resources that have been beneficial to him? So other ones are Mesa Adaptive Sports Program. So we live in Mesa, Arizona, and he has been actively involved in their adaptive sports program for youth with disabilities for several years now, plays on the soccer team and the basketball team. And I'm happy to report that both of those teams that he's on won the state championship for Special Olympics this year. So, just, helping him balance giving him opportunities to balance his, physical development and physical well-being. And also when he was in high school, he participated in, because at the time we lived in the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. And so he participated in their tribal vocational rehabilitation program. So that was a community resource that was available and beneficial to him. Also, two community organizations that have been very valuable over the years are Raising Special Kids, which is Arizona's Parent Training Information Center. Everybody should definitely utilize Raising Special Kids. I had to, I received, personal assistance, as a parent, when issues with the IEP or the whole, special ed process came up throughout the years, from their trained and skilled staff, and it always helped. It was totally beneficial. Also, the other community organization or agency is the Arizona Center for Disability Law. And they also provided information and all kinds of resources, that are available on their website, to me personally, as Mateo's parent throughout the years, through the special ed process. So Arizona Center for Disability Law is Arizona's protection and advocacy agency, state agency for people with disabilities in Arizona. So I highly recommend both of those community supports. And also the Arizona Brain Injury Alliance. So we haven't utilized a whole lot of their services, but they do have a lot of services available that I think would be beneficial for other people that are dealing with brain injury. Thanks.
Right. Thanks very much. And Nikisha, you have a hand up. Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think what Tana had said is something really that needs to be pointed out, because I know what a lot of people who have brain injuries deal with, especially from a cultural perspective, is to either have them be institutionalized, so like after they are involved in whatever kind of whatever gives them their traumatic brain injury, their parents are given the option, or they're given the option to either have the person be institutionalized, so sent away into a private institution, so like to be placed over in like bigger cities who are with people who know how to deal with these things, and versus people who can have their children be placed back at home within their own culture, within their own families. That's something that my parents had to decide, because um like Tana, my parents were unfamiliar on how to deal with people who had traumatic brain injuries and the different health things that they had to overcome. But my dad was the one who said, you know what, we're gonna take me, well, Nikisha, to we're gonna have her be at home so that she can live with her family, her friends, and so on and so forth, rather than having me be put into a higher facility and being raised by people who I don't know, and that would also go along with being assimilated into a culture that I do not myself identify with. So yeah.
Great. Thanks very much. In light of that, Nikisha, why don't I put this question to you, because I think it's important given what you just said. What are your experiences with others who do not understand about TBI, and how do you advocate for yourself or your loved one with them, both in your culture and outside of it?
Well, so for example, like what I've dealt with when I went to school over in Colorado was that when I met with the disabilities coordinators, I'd say, okay, here's my IEP, this is what I need. But however, once we they they kept on pushing for me to be reevaluated, which is not something that I wanted to do. I've also come across other people within that school facility who said that they had learning disabilities, and even though the school had put out their accommodations that they saw fit, they had a high dropout rate for students who have disabilities, and they were unable to advocate, well, not advocate, but that they had a hard time with their disabilities coordinator. And that was hard to see, because a lot of those students, they were really smart. And don't get me wrong, Fort Lewis is a great school. It is awesome. Their education is great. But when it came to their disabilities coordinators working with us, it just fell apart. And so with me trying to further my education, I have to be really invested in seeing how their disabilities people are dealing with their students. And it's really having you to be really self advocate for yourself, and to know what your strengths and what your weaknesses are.
Thanks.
And
Kenny or Tom, would you like to respond or answer the question yourself? Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, I'll go. So with so like how I self-advocated for myself was that I had to really sit down with myself and tell myself that it's going to be hard from now on. So I had to figure out what I can and can't do. And yeah, and I really wanted to go to college, get a higher education, to to move up in life, I guess. But well, like with self advocacy, I can't drive because transportation is a huge part for that. like because of my vision and my motor skills, I'm kind of afraid to get behind the wheel. So I didn't know how to deal with that situation. So I went to my to my local bus company, and I advocated for myself. I told them like why I'm doing this, why I need it, and they understood. They gave me like a they gave me like a free bus pass. Yeah, sorry, sorry. There's construction going on outside my apartment. So no. Anyways, so I I I they gave me like a free bus pass, and they gave me like a voucher to take taxi or Uber rides and stuff. And yeah, like I was able to go to work, go to school with no issue. And yeah, I'm just yeah, I I had to especially in, like taking classes to like going to disability resources and advocating what I need for those accommodations. And yeah, it was extremely challenging to cope that with the diagnosis in the end. Uh, like not in, yeah, but like I had it was extremely challenging to cope that I had to commit the extra time and effort to do like even do like normal tasks. But but learning how to self-advocate kind of reduced kind of took the weight off my shoulders. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's good. That's great. Tana, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so our experiences with people who don't understand traumatic brain injury um, are based on the fact that traumatic brain injury, because it's a non-visible disability, a lot of times, just looking at Mateo, you wouldn't immediately recognize that he has a traumatic brain injury. And then also, I feel like there's a certain level of discomfort that people in general have with people with disabilities, just because they don't know, they haven't been around people with disabilities enough to realize, they should just treat them like everybody else. And, that they might need to make some, adaptations, or, it's just like a comfort level thing that I've realized over the years, or that I've seen, so once people pick up on the fact that, oh, he might, that Mateo might, you can kind of see when that occurs to them that, oh, something's different about him. So then when we reach that part, it's usually, we usually have to deal with people having low expectations of his ability or his intelligence, which neither one are true, because he's perfectly capable of a lot of things that people don't think he is able to do. And also he is very intelligent. It just takes a little bit longer to process information and for him to respond, especially with people's communication styles. There's definitely a difference between the way Native people communicate and how non-Native people communicate. And so it feels like it's been my observation that, in the non-Native communication style, it's all about, speaking real fast and answering real fast. And, it's just not like that. And it's easier for him to communicate, with people who are Native, because in general, he gets that respectful pause that he needs in order to process what has been said to him, and then determine what his response is going to be, because those are two separate actions. he's not able to do that like simultaneously. And so I feel like that's, one adaptation that or one thing that, we always have to deal with. And then also, my answer to the part about how do you advocate for yourself or your loved one with people who don't understand TBI, or disability in general, is to always take action when needed. Throughout the years, there have been so many instances when, there's been disrespect, there's been negativity, there's been, all like kind of the dark side of, the part of that people don't really want to talk about or face. But when you find yourself in those situations of, things happening like that to you or your loved one, it is always the right decision to take action, to, file complaints, exercise your rights, because it's not going to just benefit yourself or your loved one with a disability. It's going to benefit all of the other people, that are going to be mistreated the same way if you do nothing. So I think that always taking action is definitely, a worthwhile advocacy skill. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much. And I suppose on that, Tana, I would like to pose the next question to you, since it does build off of what you just said, which is, what advice would you give to other Native TBI survivors in the state? Okay, I wrote down my list. So leverage cultural resources, practices, teachings. I kind of already covered this one, but definitely utilize the inherent strength of your culture, because as Native people, we all have, we've been surviving for who knows how many years, because of the strength of our ancestors. So realize that is definitely an underutilized area of a resource. So participate in ceremonies, pray, smudge, do whatever is part of your cultural teachings, to keep yourself strong every day, because that's just a general cultural practice anyway, that's beneficial. And it definitely helps, all of us with disabilities. Always set yourself up for success. So that's a practice of, that I utilize, when I was raising both of my sons, because Mateo has an older brother, and just making sure that, whatever they felt that they wanted to be involved in or do, that they were prepared for it. For example, Mateo has great skill in theater. He's actually an actor. One of his degrees that he got was in theater arts. The other one is in visual communication, so graphic design. But he, I had no idea that he wanted to do theater and that he was interested in acting, but I did support that. And I always, made sure that he was set up to be successful, because when you do that, it increases self-esteem and the ability to take risks and to grow and to evolve, as a human being. So always, the time that you invest in setting yourself up or your loved one, setting your loved one up for success is always worth it. Also, rehearse advocacy scenarios as needed to safely increase effective skills. So self-advocacy skills, they don't just, appear naturally when a student turns 18. So it's a process of developing those skills throughout the years. So there have been times when we've actually, me and Mateo, we've actually had to rehearse, okay, this happened. What's a good way to react or to respond to that situation in the future? What could you have said differently, that might have gotten a different result? Working through those and actually like acting them out, rehearsing them, carefully choosing the words that you say, because, Mateo's communication is impacted by his brain injury. So it doesn't always occur to him,
the power that each word can contain and how it can strengthen, an advocacy response. Also, expect and prepare for pushback, confrontation, etc., that happens to minimize the negative impact when it does happen. So this is another, the other part of, the uncomfortable part of dealing with, how people with disabilities are treated. But realize that, that those things do happen, like more than they should. And you have to prepare yourself, to be able to deal with that, so that you can minimize the negative impact that it has on you as a person and as a human being. So, and also my final advice tip is to always take care of yourself, socially, emotionally, spiritually, take care of that well-being part of yourself, because, there are a lot more challenges and a lot more, unpleasant experiences that you have to deal with, as a person with a disability. But, we are all here for a reason, and we all have a place and a space, and we all matter, so, take care of yourself so you can fulfill, what is your purpose in life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tana. Nikisha or Kenny, would you like to respond or give your own response to the question that I posted in the chat?
I'll go.
Hi, Kenny.
So so what I had to do is like I had to really tell myself that it's gonna be different from now on. So I'd say focus on what you can and can't do. And from my experience, I can't really do a lot of physically. Like I can't walk, or I can't walk a mile or anything. You can't do anything extreme like that. So I I found my other strengths, which was like using my brain and stuff. So, and because I really wanted to go to college, I can use my brain, because there's other strengths besides physical strength. There's but yeah, but for me, like, physical strength it's important, but I can only do as much so I can only do so much. So I like I found those other strengths that I can use. And I encourage other native TBI survivors to find those strengths like how I did. And yeah, and experience, I like what Tona said about like taking care of your well-being, your spiritually and stuff. And that's true, because yeah, there are times where I get like really sad or really depressed and stuff. And I don't know how it's kind of hard to deal with. So I like to watch like stand-up comedy and look at funny videos and stuff, because that makes me laugh. And and I feel like that's like a way to take care of yourself spiritually and emotionally and stuff. Because um in um in um in my Native American, or then in Native American way, your your physical strength is, or your mental health is just as important as your physical health. So taking care of both of those is is what makes a person like strive for strive to do greatness, you know. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Kenny. And Nikisha, you have the last word on this subject. What advice would you like to give to other Native TBI survivors in the state?
Just to keep going. It's an ongoing process. It's going to be hard, yes, but there are little achievements that you can reward yourself with, like just like getting up and writing down certain things. That's what I needed to do. I needed to always constantly write everything down, and so that I could remember it, and to set a routine for myself, and to know that everything is possible, that you have people around you, you have your family, you have your friends, you have other people out there who are going to help you, and that anything is possible. I know that it's going to be hard, but just like what Tana and Kenneth has said, that it's a world of opportunities right now. We are the culture creatives who are out there making a difference for the next generation, so that their lives can be better, and so that they don't have to suffer with what we had to go through. It's kind of like similar to what our native tribes had to go through, with the assimilation with Western life. But we are strong. We have a strong community who is going to be there to help us overcome the hardships that we are going to be facing. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. And that was our last question for our panel. Thank you. I thank the three of you, Kenny, Nikisha, and Tana, very much for sharing your stories. As I hope you noticed in the chat, people have been chiming in with very powerful and helpful and useful to all others, both native and not, in the state and even in the country, who are living every day with TBI and the consequences of TBI. What I would like to do now is open it up to the audience for the next 10 to 15 minutes or so and ask you, well, first I'll give you the chance to ask our panelists any questions that you have, such as there was one earlier. There was a very good and important question. I would invite you to ask that again. But then also with the rest of your audience members, please you can look at this, the Intertribal Council of Arizona published a fact sheet on TBI that gave specific preventative recommendations. And you can reference that if you'd like, but I would also like you to answer these questions. What is available to support concussion or TBI survivors in your communities? And what more do you need? And of course, any of our panelists can answer these as well. I would just like to invite everyone to be involved in the discussion here today. So I would guess raise your hand and I will call on you if you have any responses that you would like to say or any questions that you would like to ask our panelists.
Hi, this is Amberly. I'm not sure if we just click unmute and ask.
Go ahead, since
Okay.
I don't think anyone else is raising their hand. So go ahead.
I appreciate all the information. I work as a case manager, and I really, how do you say, it kind of just was heartfelt to hear Tona explain that you have to make that extra effort to advocate, especially when there's like cultural ways of the way we communicate. We have pauses, we tell the story before we give the answer. And I think sometimes we get kind of put to shame when we do that. And I think my question, it's not really a question, I'm giving more of like a appreciation statement. But I think that one of the questions was like, what's one thing? It's like, you have to keep trying. You have to be patient and be the bigger person. And sometimes you have to be dismissed, but you have to keep trying and know and take pride in how we communicate and how we're going to have pauses. And that just makes it all the more meaningful. And thank you guys for sharing your story. I thought I had a question, but I can't formulate it right now.
Oh, that's perfectly all right. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Fallon or Phelan. If you would like to ask your question now, that would be wonderful. And because I would love for all of us to talk about a very important issue, which is in terms of diagnosis.
Hi, I had a question on, like, I work for a VR in New York State, and sometimes we get consumers that come in that don't necessarily know if they have a TBI, and, we make referrals to, get assessments completed, but is there anything specific that we should be looking for when communicating with the doctor's offices and getting that specific diagnosis?
Well, I will tell you one resource that I definitely know. Well, actually, no, panelists, I apologize for jumping in. That's TBI right there. If you have any responses, please share. Go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really sure about that because I mean, when I was diagnosed, I was 17 years old, and they didn't diagnose me like right away. Like they said it was like a tumor, a cancer at first. Then after they ran all those tests on me, and the symptoms I got from after they ran all the tests on me, then the symptoms like they got better understanding from the symptoms I was experiencing. Like I think because of those they labeled it as a TBI injury. So yeah, I'm not totally sure how it works, but um I think was I think you should ask about the symptoms the person is dealing with, you know.
Thanks very much. Tanner and Nikisha, would you like to share?
I just wanted to add that I'm glad we're having this discussion about diagnosis, because I feel like a lot of times there's kind of a stigma, there's the stigma around, disability, but then also, I'm thinking of a person close to me in particular, who sustained a traumatic brain injury and is in total denial that he has one. And, just because he, and I can notice it because I've known this person for years, but I feel like he's not ready to accept that about himself. So anyway, so I feel like that diagnosis part is, there are some barriers to diagnosis. So like maybe the acceptance of, oh, you might have a traumatic brain injury, or even just, how do I deal with it if I actually have one? And I feel like, medically is probably the way to go. So, contacting your primary care provider, maybe giving the history of, why you feel like you may have a traumatic brain injury. I know, even with Mateo, there was a, like when he became eligible to be on my insurance at work, they needed a disability documentation letter. And, from all of the years of medical care that he had, you would have thought that would have been easy. It was not easy. It took a year to actually get that, because they had to do like a review of all of the medical records. And then they had to do, an official letter, and it actually caused him a year of not being able to be to be covered by health insurance. So there are definitely systemic barriers, that you don't realize until you live through them. So, but I would say, yeah, starting with the primary care provider and then going there and not taking no for an answer. Another useful tip that was shared with me is if, you ask for a medical procedure and then you're told no by the medical provider, that you should ask for that to be noted in your medical record. So get written verification that you asked for a certain procedure and then that they denied it. And then you can move forward in the process of advocating for yourself, to get the procedures that you need to, diagnose whatever you feel, might be, something that you have. Thank you.
Thanks. So what I posted in the chat recently is probably one of the most commonly used diagnostic tools. It's very simple. You don't need to be a medical professional to utilize it. It's the Ohio State University TBI identification model. Additionally, the American Institutes of Research has published, and we'll have a brief presentation about that later. I published a resource bundle for Native Americans, which, well, I noticed that Cindy just posted about that in the chat as well. We'll be having a brief presentation on that, but I would say all the resources that you may need could be found there. Well, maybe not all, but many of the sources that you may need. And also what my research, which did in the city of Seattle, which did include several individuals from Native American communities, identified is that there isn't really any one thing that living with TBI means. Granted, social treatment or mistreatment and stigma is definitely the most common one, but generally speaking, it really depends on the individual. And so getting the medical diagnosis will help, but it will not give people that you know all the answers that they need. That much of this is going to have to come through a process of exploration by themselves, and all of our panelists have reaffirmed this today, knowing what the TBI means for them, and also how the community and especially cultural resources that they have at their disposal play an integral part in learning to live with the consequences of that TBI. So now, if possible, are there any more comments or questions in response to our two questions for the audience before we move on? Well, I guess not. I don't exactly have everything open on my screen. Has anyone raised their hand or anything else like that?
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. Okay.
I was just
doesn't
going to
look
say,
like it.
Austin, it doesn't look like it. I just wanted to give a little time warning. We have about 10 minutes left in the session.
Well, with about 5 minutes, in about 5 minutes, I would like to turn the floor over to Cindy from the American Institutes for Research, who can talk a little bit about that American Indian TBI resource bundle that I was just mentioning. Cindy, would you like to unmute yourself? I believe you have that ability.
Yep, I do. Well, thank you so much, Austin and everyone, for this awesome session. I learned so much. I was in tears with, as you share your powerful story, because my brother sustained a severe TBI, and which motivated me to do more for the TBI community. So I work for the American Institute for Research, and I'm a researcher by training, and I have helped develop working with the traumatic brain injury model systems that provide comprehensive care for people with TBI. So we have developed many research-based resources, and then I have a grant to translate that, culturally adapt those resources for American Indians to create this, we call it a TBI bundle, traumatic brain injury bundle resources. So we And I wonder whether Austin, would you like to share the my bundle website, or you want me to?
There we go. Sorry, I apologize. Should have forwarded that slide.
Okay, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. So I also put in the chat my bundle. If you just click on the chat of that link, you can get to the website. And so there are just several key features of these resources. They're free. They're funded by U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and they're also research-based. That my cat is right here, so I'm very sorry. So you get another speaker, and he's also very vocal as well. And I'm working from home, so apologize if he's just needs some bit of attention. So, and so we. It's research-based, that's first feature. And second is that this bundle, all these resources are developed with American Indians with TBI and for American Indian with TBI. And so we look at their, their needs. I took copious notes today, and the symptoms you have shared. So we wanted to address all of these symptoms that you have experienced. For example, the concussion that the symptoms of fatigue, the symptoms of the physical aspect of it, and also the psychological aspect of it as well. We have resources on emotional problems, depression. We also have cognitive problems, executive function and memory loss, how you manage that. And yes, this is my TV about project. That's right. Thank you so much for showing the website. And so we published the three and these resources also designed in a way that addressing the culture aspect of American Indians. So we use storytelling to do the work. We have info comics, we have infographics, and basically, using this storytelling format and embed the American cultural values like sovereignty, like self-determination, like autonomy, and so and it's a strength-based resources as well. We always empower the we also always empower the readers, telling them what they're experiencing, and then also to tell them what some of the strategies they can try. So we always give them strategies so that they can make informed decision. And then we also have these resources also can be customized for your tribe. So if you would like to have a customized bundle for your tribe, you could contact us at tbibundle@ar.org. So I'm going to put that into the chat box. Also, that you can get on our website. This website shows how you can contact to get a customized bundle for your tribe or organization if you're interested. And we have been engaging the American Indians with TBI and their caregivers to provide feedback on all of these resources. These resources would not be published without the input from the American Indians and their families with TBI. And so we would love to engage you to be part of this process. So do you want to just these bundles resources represent a few community, American Indian communities perspective? If the answer is no, I'd love to engage you to be part of this process, provide your input. We want to know, what you want, whether the topics were covered, if we missed anything, and if the content really resonate with you. And if the format of the resources are really, user-friendly to you, and we'd love to engage you. So we do have incentives for being part of this interview process to provide feedback. And so I'd love for everyone to consider being part of this bundle development. So our goal is that to co-develop these resources with and for American Indians with TBI. And the goal is to support the community the best way we can. Okay. So great.
Oh.
So we published 3 things. So one is the concussion recovery, and then understanding TBI, what TBI is. And then the third thing is alcohol use and TBI. How can you stop drinking? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Cindy, and everyone. I hope you will consider helping the American Institute of Research develop this very important bundle. Now, with the last couple minutes, thank you everyone for attending. We have, please use this QR code to try and fill out a very helpful evaluation for us on how useful this session was. And I'd like to turn it back over to Lizzie from the Sonoran Center, who has a couple words about the get DEI credit for the University of Arizona. Lizzie, do you want to take over?
Yes, thank you so much, Austin. I'll give everyone just an extra moment here to access the survey here on the screen. I know the team really appreciates all of your feedback and insights. My closing comments are just relevant to those of us who are members of the College of Medicine Tucson and may have been attending today's session for DEI credit. If that is the case, please make sure to click the link that I just shared in chat, and I'll share it on the screen in just a moment. Again, this only applies to our College of Medicine Tucson faculty, residents, fellows, TAs, and other staff. If you follow this link and you can scan the QR code here, you'll need to put in your UArizona Net ID and password, and only upon the completion of this form will you be granted DEI registration and credit for attending today's session. So thank you very much. And Austin, I'll just turn it back over to you for any closing words.
Okay, well then, hold a sec. Yes, let me just go back to the presentation. Where is it? There we go. Please join us in 2 weeks on Friday, June 30th, or I suppose that's a week, on Friday, June 30th, when Maria Martinez and Regina Cisneros, both people that I've worked with before, I really respect and appreciate them, who will give nationwide traumatic brain injury resources and practical lessons in what they call a journey of brain injury from an Indigenous and rural perspective. This is part of our Native Center for Disabilities webinar series. At the time at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, so Arizona time works a little bit differently than the rest of the country, but so we're essentially on Pacific time. So 11 a.m. Pacific time, this webinar on June 30th will happen. The link to register for the webinar is, I believe, on the exact same source that you found the link to register for this webinar. And if not, feel free to reach out to anyone, me or anyone on my team, for that link. I want to thank you, Tana, Kenny, and Nikisha, for assisting us with this very important panel. Your stories made a very large difference. And I really hope that you will look through the chat before leaving and see all the kind words of appreciation that you received for your stories. Also, Cindy, you sent the link directly to me instead of to the whole chat, so you may want to resend that. And with that, thank you very much for attending this webinar on traumatic brain injury among Native American communities in Arizona. This is a very important issue. I hope you saw from the slides that Joshua presented that this is very pressing. There's some alarming statistics some alarming incidents that we really need to understand better. And thank you everyone for coming and for listening to me drone on, and for listening to all of our panelists. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And we hope to see you in a week on Friday, June 30th. Okay, bye-bye.